Okay, well, thank you all for being here today, and we're so excited again to have Catherine Lacefield McDonald join us. Catherine has been a trusted partner in the philanthropic space for 20 years and is joining us actually today from Medellin, Colombia, which is amazing in the highlands of Colombia. But her professional experience is in fundraising and as a spokesperson and communications manager. Her areas of expertise are animal and environmental causes, but she has touched a variety of social causes in her work, including homelessness, the arts, and community services. And Catherine is the founder and head consultant at Just Because Consulting and brings a wealth of insights to the table. She's currently the coordinator and communications manager of the Phi Lab, Canada's largest philanthropic granting research lab, and has been at the forefront in that role of grant making research, particularly in the realms of social environmental justice. She's also currently a lecturer with the University of Montreal. And the session today is called Donor Segmentation, Analysis, and Stewardship. And I want to also note that we have kind of a follow-up session to this segmentation analysis and stewardship session, which will take place on Monday, March 17th. So next Monday, yeah, that's crazy. It's already mid-March. So next Monday at the same time, 10:30 to noon, but we wanted to create this two-part series just to cover some more kind of the next step in this process. So starting with segmentation and analysis and then moving towards communications from acquisition to requisition. So sorry, to retention. So we're really excited to have this two-part series and thrilled to have you, Catherine. Before I pass the microphone over to you, I do just want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional lands of the Treaty 4 territory, the home of the Cree, Saulteaux, Nakota, Dakota, Lakota, and the Métis people. And I just want to say that as we come together for this Growing Nonprofit session, we recognize the deep and ongoing relationships that Indigenous people have with this land and the histories of colonialism that have shaped our nonprofit sector, and just our commitment to learning, unlearning, and working towards reconciliation in this space. And in the spirit of this session, which is all about, strengthening our nonprofit sector, we invite reflection on how we can build more inclusive, equitable, and community-centered organizations that honor Indigenous knowledge, leadership, and self-determination. And I just encourage us all to think about how we can embed these commitments into our work, not just today, but always in the way that we serve our communities going forward. So thank you again all for being here. We're really thrilled to have this Growing Nonprofit series in partnership with the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation. And without further ado, I will pass it over to you, Catherine, to get started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Colleen, for the introduction. I just totally forgot to update the fact that actually since this last September, I am no longer the head coordinator of Phi Lab. I actually stepped down, but I still work with them as an external consultant on a lot of their communications. Since I did do that for 7 years, they still I still work with them for many things. But anyways, I should update that. One of the things, many things on my to-do list. All right, so let's go straight in because there's a lot of stuff to cover and I want to make sure we have time to cover everything today. So we will be talking about the kind of like the first steps of when you're starting to get to know your donors through segmentation analysis, and then how that can lead into a better stewardship of your donors. So let's dive right in of the main question of like, why even invest in donor stewardship? So I'll be asking some questions. I don't know how active this group is going to be. So please feel free to add into the chat. It really makes it more interactive. If not, of course, I might later on, we might be talking more about turning on your mic and just allowing yourselves to actually participate verbally. But if not, to get started, why should we invest in stewardship as a nonprofit? So if you have any ideas, please feel free to drop it in the chat or raise your hand. Of why is investing in donor retention so much more important than we could ever think? Is there anyone that has any ideas of why they believe stewardship is even more important now than it ever was before? No. All right, so thank God I'm here because no one seems to know. So I will go right to it and explain. So according to many different studies, it has been shown that acquisition of either new clients or new donors can cost 5 to 25 times more than the retention of an existing client or donor. So when we're thinking about being more efficient as nonprofits, as we're thinking about saving funds and making sure that we're not investing in the wrong strategies, retention really is the way to go, because we won't be able to constantly be on this hamster wheel of acquisition. First of all, it burns out your staff, it burns out your all of your strategies at the end of the day, but it also burns through a lot of resources and energy. So instead, if we redirect that energy towards investing more into stewardship and retention, we're just going to be more efficient as a nonprofit overall. So with this in mind, I wanted to clarify a little thing around recognition versus stewardship. So there's two of those. When someone makes a donation, you're going to want to do more of the recognition. So it's following a very specific action. You make a donation, you say thank you. It's generally more time sensitive in the sense that you're going to want to do it quite close to the time of the action of the donation. Not going to want to wait 6 months and say, oh, thank you for the donation you made last year. Like, no, it's going to be more in a short time period. And it's usually very much around the thank you. You're thanking them for a specific gift. Versus, on the other hand, stewardship is much more of a longer actions through time. It's not a punctual action. It's going to be really about building a relationship with your donor. So these are going to be more like repeated actions and touch points throughout the year. And over many years, you're building a relationship with this donor. So if I could just generally say, we're going to be focusing more on the stewardship component, which is more how to build relationships through time, but that will also, of course, include recognition. You need to start with saying thank you for what they've done, and then build relationships through time so that you can continuously thank them for the actions that they will do. I just wanted to clarify that from the get-go. Okay, what are some examples of actions that we can do for recognition? So how do you say thank you to your donors once they make a donation? Any ideas from the crowd?
How about a thank you note or like a handwritten note?
Telephone call.
So phone calls, personal email to every donor in the chat. Exactly. So you can have either virtual, if you know, depending on how much time you have, depending on how much capacity you have. Handwritten letters are obviously amazing, but maybe you don't have the capacity to do that. Yeah, that's a good point, Kate, around acknowledgement and recognition. Recognition can be more large scale as well. You're recognizing them publicly versus something that's more just writing to them. Recognition then in your definition, I would say, is be more like having it on your annual report, for example, where you're going to be recognizing that these people made a donation, or putting it on your website for major donations. So yeah, acknowledgement will flip into more what I'm talking about when I say about recognition. So good point. Thanks, Kate. So yes, these are all great examples. And when we're talking about stewardship, they can be very similar. It can also be phone calls. It can also be emails, but it's not necessarily in the scope of saying thank you. It's more about developing a relationship with them beyond that initial gift. Okay. So today we're going to talk about the 5 pillars of stewardship that I tend to cover in a lot of my classes. So it's around, number 1, understanding what are the motivations for people to keep on donating to the same organization? What can you do to really inspire people to stay with you? Number 2, I will dive into why monthly giving is, in my opinion, the key to retaining donors long-term, but I'm going to be focusing on other forms as well of donations, such as major gifts. But I really want to talk specifically about monthly giving, because I think that in a subscription economy, that is the way to go. But that is one of the aspects. Number 3, we're going to talk about how to segment your database to really be able to have a better strategy moving forward. Number 4, around how to analyze the data that you collect. And finally, we're going to dive into more of those retention strategies in the long term. Okay, so let's get started to what are the factors that influence retention rates. So this is going to be based on a couple of studies as well as my own experiences, but I've participated in many different conferences and done many readings on the research behind what are the psychological motivations of why people stay with the same organization through time. So once again, little question to the crowd. What do you think will motivate people to stay with an organization through time? Does anyone have any ideas of some either strategies? Jody?
They share stories of
of success, where they're like kind of what their money's going towards.
Yes.
Investing in what they're investing in with their donors, what they're giving.
Exactly. So when people can showcase impact and very clearly say, hey, this caused this, people are much more on board than when it's too abstract and they can't really see where the money's going to. So yes, so there would
emotional connection.
Emotional connection, 100%. Thanks, Leah. So when people can have a connection themselves with the organization or with its mission or with the stories that are being shared, they're much more likely to connect and then stay with them. Prompt acknowledgement and demonstrate impact of gifts. So yes, we have a lot of impact of gifts. And of course, the retention or the acknowledgement of the gifts, the thank yous is very important. When people don't feel acknowledged or they don't feel like recognized or seen as donors, they're just much less likely to continue. So it's just a very important part of the process. So these are all very good answers. So there's actually 4 main factors that have been demonstrated as having a very big impact on donor retention. So number 1 is attraction. When I mean attraction, I don't mean physical attraction. That's not what we're saying here. So we're going to dive into what do we mean when we're talking about attraction? We're talking about attraction to the cause, something that really pulls at your heartstrings and makes you feel like, yes, I want to commit. Number 2 is around message clarity. So we talked about impact. That's a big one. Number 3 is exclusivity. We're going to talk about that. And then credibility and reputation. So these are the 4 factors. There's actually a 5th one that I found really interesting in one of the studies I read, that it was all around their family's philanthropic history. So in the sense of, if as kids, their families were much more active philanthropically speaking, if they were donors themselves, if they participated in the community, the children are much more likely to continue and commit to organizations than if that wasn't the case. However, because you can't really influence what someone's childhood was like, it's not as relevant as a nonprofit to understand these. The only thing I would say is, if we do want to dive into that, is that getting children involved in the process. So having family focused activities where you can actually bring entire families to the table and get them involved can actually start the process of kind of bringing the next generation of donors to your organization. So it has been shown that children that get involved at a younger age, that they will be much more likely to stay long-term with an organization. Okay, so let's dive into number 1, all the impact of attraction. So as Leah said earlier, a message that is based on emotion. So we are not all very rational beings. There's some, like Virgos, that are much more rational. I am married to a Virgo, and so he's a very rational being. But as a Cancer myself, I'm much more emotional. And most people, when we talk about the influence of what will push them to give, it's much more around the emotion that it makes us feel. Not just the emotion of the cause itself, but the emotion of how good we feel when we do make a donation. So we have to make sure when we're curating our messaging, when we're writing our copy, for our website, for our donation page, for our thank yous, for our email series, we have to make sure that we're using emotionally triggering language that will allow us to feel something good. And talking about that, I do feel that there has been a huge movement away from making people feel sad or guilty, and instead moving towards making people feel empowered and happy. A really great example, especially for international aid, I'm sure everyone knows about the whole World Vision old ads where they would make these really sad stories about the typical child with like the flies around their face. Like, it was heartbreaking. We've been moving away from that. So yes, that does trigger an emotion, but more and more the whole poverty porn has been moving away. Instead, if you ever check out Charity Water's strategy, they use these empowering photos of children and families of when they finally get access to their water and they're drinking a nice clean glass of water, and you see how happy they are and empowered. They're no longer in a position of I would say weakness or of needing something from someone else. They've actually in a position of power. So that creates a sense of like, oh my God, I can create that impact. So we're focusing on the positive outcomes instead of the negative present. So this is just one thing. I'm not going to dive too much into that because we're going to talk about that in the next class on Monday. But this is a very important point of based on emotion. Number 2 is around calling on their personality and values. So what do I mean by that? Is you're really seeing by donating, you're donating because that is part of who you are. So I'll give you an example, as you see below. Thank you for being the type of person who believes that access to books should be a right for all. So for example, if someone is donating, they're not just donating because they care. They're donating because that is a personal value. In the animal rights world, for example, thank you for being the type of person, or thank you for being someone who believes that animals deserve to be respected too. You can always touch it back to who they are, because if we're thinking from a psychological perspective, we're thinking about how we can get them to believe that this is going to sound a bit weird, but like they can't stop giving because it's so entrenched in who they are as a person that they need to continue the commitment that they have made to this organization, because that is just who they are, in the sense of that it's not something that's going to change. I'm going to make a little difference with, for example, when you're doing a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign and you're acquiring people through other people's networks, those people are much more likely to be donating because they believe in or they care about the person fundraising than the cause. That doesn't mean that they don't care about the cause. It just means that the attachment to the cause is very different. So of course, a lot of these tactics will really depend on who we're talking to and what segments, which is what we're going to go to later, what segments we're talking to. But if these people, if you can get them to understand the connection between who they are as a person and their values, you're much more likely to create that sense of commitment to the cause. So number 3 is focusing on the person behind the donation. So instead of saying thank you for the gift, you can focus a lot on thank you for being who you are. Thank you for being the type of person. That kind of language really helps into creating a sense of I'm talking to you, and then that means that they were much more likely to want to stay. Number 4 is, of course, a personal attachment to the cause. So as I gave with the example of peer-to-peer, where people are mostly giving because they're supporting the person who's fundraising, most of the time when people donate, it's because they have a personal attachment to the cause. If we talk about health issues, for example, or hospital foundations or school foundations, it's because they have a connection to the institution. If it's a health situation, it might be because someone in their family has suffered from whatever disease it is or whatever ailment, and that makes that they have a personal story. So these stories, which will, how can we use those stories and get people involved in sharing their why? That is a very important way of getting people to feel attracted to your organization. So that's number 1 around attraction. Number 2, this is what Jody had mentioned and other people in the chat around message clarity. So we really want to make sure that the message and the mission and vision that you're sharing is very easy to understand. I'll give you 2 examples of 2 clients that I've worked with. One of them that is, I find a bit more difficult for the general population to understand, and one that is very straightforward. So I'll start with so it's Unlock Democracy Canada. I love them. They're doing great work, but they focus on improving democracy through donor reform. So what they do is they're really trying to change the voting system in Canada to make it more democratic. But in what we've noticed is that a lot of times it's much more abstract. Voter reform, democratic reform, improving democracy. The tactics of what is actually going to be the long-term impacts are a bit more abstract compared to my other client, which is Vivo Kore Foundation. What they do is they actually pay for the travel of children in Rwanda to other countries, mostly in Europe and in Egypt, to get congenital heart surgery. So they're literally, they can say every $2,000 covers one child's heart surgery. Most people can understand that. It's very direct. $2,000 equals saving a child's heart. $2,000 for Unlock Democracy Canada, it helps for advocacy and education and awareness. I'm not saying that there's not a way of using emotion for that, but if you can just notice the difference, that it's a lot harder to understand when we're talking about communications and show the impact of what your donations are going to go towards. And that's one of the difficulties of advocacy, is that it takes a long, long time. So I'll give you another example later on for monthly giving of how you can actually use that to your advantage. Another point is around coherent messaging across platforms and communications. I've sometimes seen many nonprofits that their social media and their email doesn't reflect the same type of messaging, same energy. If the website has a certain, maybe it's the old language that you used to use and it hasn't been updated, and now on social media and emails, you're doing different wording. Well, that creates a sense of disconnect with your potential donors and your existing donors. You want to really try to use the same language across all of your donation platforms to make sure that there's some form of consistency, especially within one campaign. You want to make sure that you're constantly repeating the same messages and goals and objectives, because people, as we all know, it takes many repetitions for people to understand and grasp onto the message. So the more consistent you are with your messaging, the more likely people will feel connected to it. If you're constantly changing and you have so many things on the go, it might be a bit confusing and people might not feel connected to the cause as much. So that's something to keep in mind. And of course, it's kind of similar to the mission and vision. We have to really be able to easily understand and explain your impact. This is where some organizations have a difficult time. If you're not measuring or collecting data on impact, it might be a bit difficult. However, if you can share stories, not just the numbers, sharing the stories of impact from your donors, from your beneficiaries, from your community, of like what has been the impact from their words, you're really going to have a much stronger argument moving forward. Because what I always tell people is, think about a coffee shop that says, I have the best coffee in the world. And they have that on their sign on their door. Okay, that's great. Do you believe that? I mean, they have skin in the game. Of course, they're going to say that they have the best coffee in the world. So no, I don't believe you. But if that same person, if I'm looking at the coffee shop and I go on Google reviews or go on Yelp and I see hundreds of people that says, honestly, this is the best coffee in town, hands down, and they have pictures of how nice their coffee looks, I'm much more likely to believe it. So this is where you can explain your impact. We'll talk about that later in the credibility as well. That can really help people understand what your impact is on their community. Okay, so when we're talking about exclusivity, what I mean is that you want to try to show the community that you're the only one to have your specific impact. So for example, if I take back my Vivo Core Foundation, they are the only organization that is helping cover the travel costs of children from Rwanda to other countries. There are other countries that are doing, maybe trying to get the congenital heart surgery in the country. There might be others that do post-care, but there's no one else doing that specific offer in Rwanda. There might be in other countries. But you really want to tell funders that if you don't fund us, there will be a gap in funding in this particular area. That sense of exclusivity can really push donors to say, oh, well, of course I have to donate, or else this is not going to happen. If you have conflicting, or if there's many other people working the exact same thing as you really have to try to find a way of, well, what do we do differently? Maybe it's in the location. So it might be geographically that you're the only ones working in that space. You might do we are the only ones doing it in this way. So it might be your methodology that's different. It might be the population that you serve that is different. So you really want to try to showcase that if you are not there, there will be a gap. Or maybe you cover all the people that are not being covered by another organization. Either way, try to show how you are the only ones doing something. Another way of looking at the sense of exclusivity is building a sense of belonging to a club or a community or a group or a family. You really want to try to get your donors to feel that they are part of the cool kids club. As much as that sounds weird, you want to get them to feel like they are part of something bigger than just themselves. This is where building that sense of community, and I'll talk about the monthly donations specifically, can really build this connection to the organization where people feel a sense of loyalty to your organization, so that if they leave, they feel like they're letting down their community. I try to look at it more from the positive sense of they want to stay because they believe in what the community is doing. They believe in what their cool club kids are doing, instead of the negative of I feel guilty and I feel bad about leaving. But both do work in the same direction. I'll give a little example of that. When I was a monthly donor for Oxfam, I joined at 18 and I stayed on for 10 years as a monthly donor because I'm the type of person that I move all the time. So I kept on having to call them to update my monthly membership, my address and my contacts and my coordinates. And I became friends with the person who was the donor management. like she would, oh, hey, Catherine, did you move again? And like, we ended up like getting to know each other. We would end up nerding out on fundraising tactics because I was a fundraiser myself. And I was like, oh, this is what I would do when I was calling people. And I felt this sense of like, we were more than just a donor talking to a customer service person. This person knew who I was. They sent me an email when I did my I think I did like, when I had reached like $1,000. They did a lot of different tactics to make me feel like I was part of their community. And that made me stay for 10 years. Because before, I mean, I could have stopped at any time, but I felt like, no, I can't let them down. I feel like, they deserve it. So I continued. Finally, receiving exclusive content. So for example, for monthly donors or people that have been there for a long time, or even just your donors might want to receive special communications that other people that are just on your newsletter do not receive, making them feel like by being part of your donor sphere, that they are getting exclusive treatment. So of course, we're going to dive into the segmentation later on around how do we do this for everyone. But it's a very big, important thing of making people feel very much like they're getting special treatment. Finally, around credibility and reputation. So if you're an organization that is maybe new and that you don't have a huge reputation yet, a big way of getting that reputation or that credibility can be by partnering with a very well-recognized and respected group, or being funded by a funder that is very much recognized. So I'll give an example. Let's say the McConnell Foundation or a MasterCard Foundation, or even your local community foundation, if they have a lot of cred by being funded by them. So like United Way, everyone knows about United Way. It gives you a sense of credibility. Oh, if this funder is giving them money, then they must be legit. So you can use your funders by also doing recognition, but also as a way of building up your credibility towards your community. But also when we're talking about storytelling earlier on, you might want to reach out to your community and ask them to share their stories of why they support you. If you don't even have a lot of donors yet, why don't you ask your volunteers, your staff, your board members to share stories of why did they decide to work with you instead of another organization? Those stories of personal attachment to your organization can really help build credibility in your organization and make the donors feel like, oh, well, this story, I can see myself, like my daughter or my son or my mom also suffered from Alzheimer's. And now I feel like I want to give back. I can see myself in this person's story. So credibility and reputation, yes, of course, it means, being transparent and doing all the other good governance things, but it also means touching base with your community and understanding what motivated them to join you, and then sharing those stories so that, like the coffee shop, it's not just you saying that you're the best organization or you're amazing. It's the people that are leaving you those Google reviews and Yelp reviews that are showcasing to the community that, yes, you are someone that is worth trusting. Okay, so these are the 4 pillars around donor stewardship that I would really say are the biggest motivations for people to stay with you. So there's attraction to the cause. There's everything that has to do with exclusivity. So building that sense of community, credibility and reputation, as well as the message clarity around your impact, your mission, and your vision. Okay. Of course, if anyone has at any time questions or whatnot, please feel free to either drop it in the chat or to raise your hand. We do have times. If not, at the end of the class, we can of course come back to them if you have any. Okay, so let's dive straight into monthly giving and understanding why we should invest more. So just quick, either show of hands or in the chat, how many of you organizations do have a monthly giving program? Just put either yes in the chat, or Elizabeth has one. Yes, yes. Yes, perfect. Not yet. Aha. Well, this will be for you, Jody. Yes, yes, no, oh no. Okay, so one of my questions is, why not? So for sure, you should always, as much, if you're using any form of online donation platform, most of them will offer the option of having that monthly donor option next to it. However, do we think that that is how you're going to get monthly donors? Not necessarily, because if we look at a donation page and you have the one-time option and you have the monthly giving option, but you don't have anything around it that's pushing you towards monthly, most people will go just for the one-time gift because it's easier. It's simpler. Unless there's someone behind them pushing them, and like not pushing in the bad way, but just encouraging them and explaining why. It's just more natural for people to go towards the one-time gift. So what we're going to talk about here is why we should create a monthly giving program and what are the different strategies you can use to make that move forward in a much more successful way. Okay, so what are some advantages of monthly giving? So from a statistical point of view, from different researches, monthly donors are 5 times more likely to give for more than 3 years. A more recent report that I just saw not too long ago said that the average, and this is for North America, so it includes the United States, it's not Canadian focused, but still an interesting statistic that says monthly donors on average over time will give for 8 years on average. That is amazing. That is a much higher retention rate than regular donors. I was just giving another class on similar type of statistics, and it was saying something that I think it was under 50% of donors will stay after their first gift. So we really want to try to get people to stay past that first gift, and monthly donations can really help. It's not just about retention, it's also that it has been shown that statistically by giving monthly, it can up to double the amount of their annual giving. Because even like myself, if someone asked me to make a $250 donation today, I would say, oof, that's a bit steep. But if someone asked me to make a $22 a month donation every month, that's much more realistic. I can fit that into my budget. So when it's monthly and it's broken up into smaller pieces, people can give more. And it has been shown that they will give more annually because it's split up through time. We don't get paid once a year. We get paid every 2 weeks, every month. So that recurring things allows us to plan better and spread it out over time instead of just at the typical end of year when everyone is already spending all of their money on Christmas gifts and then they're still being asked to make a $500 donation. It might be a bit much. Another little interesting statistic that I saw was that 56, according to this research that was done in Canada in particular, 56% of donors said to have given over $500 versus only 30% of one-time donors. So it's 56% of monthly donors that said that had given more than 500. So you can also get more higher donors by investing in a monthly giving program. But also from an internal perspective, by having this recurring things that you don't have to constantly be doing more campaigns to solicit them, you're lowering your administration and fundraising costs. So you're not needing to pay for new acquisition campaigns all the time of new donors. When you have them coming in, it's just much cheaper. I'll give an example where I was the only person managing monthly giving for an organization that had 2,000 monthly donors. So they had to pay one person, me, to update their files, update their information. Do you guys hear my dog barking or no? Perfect. He's in the background. Good. He's sad, but if I leave him out, then they're gonna just like bark all over the place. So I kind of decided this was better. My poor little baby. Okay, so you really allow yourself to have you need less capacity to manage monthly giving because you don't have to be constantly sending them solicitation emails throughout the year. Their donations are coming in, you're gonna have to manage them anyway. You're gonna have to call to update their credit card number when their credit card expires or when it doesn't work anymore or when they move. There is some admin, but it's much lower and much less intense than having to manage one-time donors all year. But also the most important part, in my opinion, is stability. So, it's being annoying. So when we're talking about stability, is every organization, most of the time, you don't just want all your money coming in at the end of the year or during these punctual campaigns. Ideally, you would want recurring revenue that allow you to invest regularly in all your programs because what is the most difficult thing to fund in a nonprofit? Your operations, your administration, your base costs. And what is the hardest thing to get grants for? Operations, administration, salaries, base costs. So in my opinion, monthly giving, which is usually not free money, but in the sense that it's not tagged on to a particular program or project, unless you want it to be, just for one program, which is another strategy. But it can go towards all of those things that are much less sexy, that are much less easy to fundraise for. Okay, so we're going to do a little practice today. So I'm gonna send you into breakout rooms. Since you guys are about 18, we'll do maybe 4 or 5 groups. And what I want you to do, oh my God, I'm gonna go let my dog out while you guys are in breakout rooms. But I want, especially if there's someone that doesn't have a monthly giving program in the team, please, let's build up a little mini strategy for this person, okay? So what we're gonna do is focus on how your monthly giving program, try to use the 4 retention motivations of why you're gonna why they should commit to a monthly. So what makes you attractive as a program or as an organization? What is your clear message going to be? What's going to be your main point? Number 3, how are you going to build a sense of exclusivity or community for your monthly giving program? And how are you going to demonstrate your credibility towards your community?
Catherine,
Okay.
could you repeat that one more time and I'm going to put it in the chat.
Yeah. I can actually probably like copy paste it in the chat if you want.
Oh, perfect. Just because I know that I never remember when I get into the breakout room.
No worries. So I can just write it down. What makes you attractive as an organization? Number 2 is going to be around what is your clear message? So like your clear impact message, like why should they donate to you? Number 3 is how are you going to build a sense of community or exclusivity within your program? So you can do either or. It can be the why do they need to donate to you? So the exclusivity aspect of, well, if you don't donate to me, then no one else is doing this. Or you can build this, how you can build a sense of community among your monthly donors. Of community or exclusivity. And number 4 is going to be around how are you going to demonstrate your credibility? And bonus points if you come up with a cool name. Okay, so it's in the chat. So I'll give you just a little quick example of what I mean by the name of the program. So I'm a volunteer for Columbia Animals. That's why it's one of the reasons why I was in Colombia. I was volunteering for a spay neuter campaign on an island close to Cartagena, which was amazing. And she doesn't have a monthly giving program, even if I've been harassing her for the last year to build it. So we decided that our monthly giving program was going to be called the Snip Snip Brigade because we're snipping the animals. And actually, I'll give you a perfect example. So maybe it'll get your wheels turning. I wish I could show you because it's on my toe, but all of the volunteers that were participating in the campaign actually got an upside down heart tattooed to their toe, which is actually, I'm sorry, I feel weird saying this on, but it's actually a pair of testicles because it's a heart, but it's also testicles that we're going to be snipping during the campaign. And I got mine that says snip. And that, like, for me, volunteers that will go to the point of getting themselves tattooed or like something that has to do with the organization, that is a key story to share. We are so committed to snipping that we got it tattooed to us. That is a perfect example of building a sense of community. These volunteers now will forever think of this tattoo and they'll think about it. So obviously we're not asking everyone to get tattooed, but you can do the stickers, you can do the logos, building a sense of exclusivity. We're the only ones in Colombia doing it. You get the drift. So anyways, I'm going to let you go into the breakout rooms. I'm going to give you guys about, I think you said, Colleen, about 15-20 minutes is usually what you do for the breakout rooms.
Sorry, yes. Yeah, whatever. Even, let me think here. Yeah, that works fine.
Okay. The class is until 1.
No, well, yeah, maybe 1 o'clock your time, but noon,
Yeah.
for us.
Okay. So I'll do 15 minutes just because there is a lot of other content that I want to continue sharing for the segmentation. So I'll just do 15 minutes. Okay. So we'll do 4 breakout rooms. That'll be participants of 4. So it's really just an exercise. I'm going to ask maybe 1 or 2 of you to just share it with everyone after. But it's really just if there's someone in your team that doesn't have a monthly giving program, let's use this time to try to build it up. Okay. So you can all join the group, sorry. If you have any problems joining, don't hesitate. Maria, Carrie, Tamara, okay. Maria, Tamara, are you having trouble joining or no, we're good? Tamara, are you having a hard time joining the breakout rooms or? I don't know.
Maybe just stepped away from it. I'm just gonna pause.
Wonderful. Okay, so I hope this was helpful and that you guys got started on some different reflections. So if you don't raise your hand, I will pick someone to present. So is there anyone that wants to share what they came up with for their monthly giving program? If not, I will put you on the spot and I will pick someone. But if anyone wants to go forward, go for it. Is anyone ready? Very shy group. Same thing last time. People were so shy. If you guys don't want to be fundraisers, you guys have to be less shy.
Catherine, I can
Go for it.
We
Yes.
were, so Lynn and Elizabeth and I were, chatting with, Laura, right? My brain. About, the, Chippendale homes. And they don't have a monthly donor program right now. And so there's a great opportunity to, and I'm sorry, it felt like 5 minutes. So we were like, oh my God, what? We were just getting into the meats and potatoes. So, but I will say it was really inspiring because there's a great opportunity. They, not only do they have a specific tangible fundraiser that they're working on, like as a major campaign, but there's a need for ongoing. So they're campaigning for a bus. They need to get this bus for their home. But then of course, as we all know, that comes with ongoing maintenance costs into the future. So there's a real opportunity here to campaign for monthly donors, even though typically those of us that have been doing it, often we're looking for just the unrestricted monthly donors. This is something that is a critical need that needs attention. So I think what we thought is really around that attraction piece, showcasing those positive, joyful experiences that this transportation is getting the participants to really create that community. So we really saw that sort of empowering the participant into these positive spaces. And if we can have those advertisements. We also thought around the credibility because this organization is already funded, gets their funding from government, but just government doesn't pay for the transportation part. So knowing that there's a strong support and need known by the government, I think that gives you your credibility. And then the messaging, well, it's very clear. They have this simple, very clear message where your donation is going. And then as far as the exclusivity, that's where we kind of left off. We were just doing roundtable discussing it. So super cool. And I now want to be a monthly donor myself.
That's the point. So I can just imagine like so many things that you can like become the wheels on the bus, you know, and like you think of like the funny like wheels on the bus go round and round of like, or the fueling happiness by being a monthly donor, you'll be literally filling our tank with the fuel necessary to have these experiences. So thinking about how can we frame this program that makes people feel like if they're not there to make the contribution, this program cannot exist. So that's where the exclusivity point can come in of like, we need fuel. We have a bus, we have no fuel, it's not moving. So we need you to help fuel these experiences, for example. So you can think about that kind of sense of exclusivity of like, yes, we need monthly, like, or one-time gifts to make the bus exist. But then what about the future? You're going to actually be the fuel that allows us to continue and move forward, or like adding kilometers to the bus, whatever it may be. But like, this is going to be the sense of like parting of a community. So amazing, great example. And this is how you can start thinking about it and making people feel like, oh my God, I want to be part of this. Is there anyone else that wants to share their monthly giving program that they came up with during the conversation? Or we'll move forward. Nope. Okay. All right, so I hope this was a helpful experience. You can, and of course, for anyone out there that is thinking about building up a monthly giving program, please have this exercise with your team of should the monthly giving program be for a specific need, like in this case that Rebecca just shared of like maintaining the bus, for example, or it can just be a monthly giving program overall, but you have to try to get them to feel of where that money is going to go to directly. And the more specific and clear you can be, the more likely it is that you're going to get the people on board. Okay. Let's move on. So segmentation, let's talk about that. Why should we segment our database and our donors? Colleen, did we hit record, by the way? Okay, just, I didn't hear it, so I wasn't sure. It's happened to me so many times after breakout rooms. Okay, so there's 3 big reasons why you should segment your CRM or your donor database to really make sure your communications and your retention can have a more specific strategy. Number 1 is prioritization. Most of you, if you don't have a limited capacity, like I applaud you, I am like glad for you, but most nonprofits that I have ever worked with do have some form of limited capacity. There's so many hours in the day, there's so many staff that you have in your organization, there's only so much money you have to invest in these strategies. So by being able to segment, you can learn to prioritize which segments you should be focusing on more or less. Number 2 is personalization, making people feel seen. So if we take the wheels on the bus example, writing to them and say, hey, you are the wheels on our bus. You are fueling our tank. Thank you so much for being a monthly donor, for doing such and such and such. Yes, I am a monthly donor. Yes, I am part of this program. I'm not just a random donor. I am this type of donor. They will feel seen. So when you can segment into, you are, our smaller gifts that like sprinkle in the extra sprinkles on top of our cupcakes, or you are our major gifts that are building the foundations of our organization. When you can talk about their levels of giving or their types of giving, you can really make them feel like you're talking to them in particular. And number 3, it's around everything around automation. So you can really create better systems that will automatically steward your donors towards either a specific goal or just automate the process of retention by creating systems of, for this segment, we're going to be sending these types of emails. For monthly donors, we're going to send these. For people that have given once, they'll get this email. So unless you have those segments, you can't invest in automation. And automation in a limited capacity in a sector that is, let's be honest here, we do have limited capacity and resources. Automation can really help you feel and make people feel like there's a whole system behind you, even if it's just automation. So that's why we should really invest in segmentation. So what criteria, how are we going to be segmenting our database? This really depends on your needs and your context and what kind of donors you have. But here are couple examples. The base criteria that I usually suggest when I do donor database analyses is number 1, the amount of the gift. So of course, someone that is giving you $5,000 a year is or should not be receiving the same forms of communication as someone who's giving you $5. So you're going to want to segment based on their level of giving. Now, around that, I will make a point here of it's also take into consideration lifetime gift value. Because you might have someone that gave you $5,000 once, but you might have someone that's been giving you $500 every year for 20 years. That lifetime value should still be considered as a really high value donor compared to a $5,000 gift once 4 years ago. Number 2 is around frequency. So this is how many times this person has given. Doesn't mean necessarily like monthly or annually, but it's more how many times have they given to you in their lifetime? Because of course, the more times they've given, the more committed they are to you, they should be stewarded differently. And finally, the date of the last gift. Someone that I gave to you, yes, $5,000, let's say again, but 5 years ago, is not the same. The energy that you should put into this person should not be the same as someone who's given you $1,000, but last year. They're more warm. So they're a warmer contact, a warmer donor. So these 3 criteria can really help you segment into how you're going to be communicating with them in different ways. Number 2 is around the donor types. So are they an individual? Are they a corporation? Are they a foundation? This is very important because the communication strategies are going to be different. If it's a corporation, maybe you're going to be wanting to offer more around sponsorship and visibility and talk about corporate social responsibility versus an individual that doesn't really care about those things. So the communications are going to be different based on the type of donor. Number 3 is going to be the type of the gift. So this is going to be, is it a one-time? Is it a monthly? Is it in-kind donations? I've once seen an organization that they calculated the value of the in-kind gift and they put them at that in the same category as people who had given a cash $5,000 gift. But when we're talking about the types of communications we're going to do to them, if these people have never given you a cash gift, soliciting them for one might seem weird. So if you can segment out your in-kind and only solicit them for in-kind gifts, they'll feel much more respected and are much more likely to respond because you're going with what they've historically donated to your organization. Finally, there's so many other criteria that you can use. It really depends on your organization. Working in an animal rights organization or animal welfare or shelter, you might want to ask, do they have a cat? Do they have a dog? Do they have bunny rabbits? You might want to segment based on their interests in your different organization. Let's say if you're an organization that defends environmental causes, you might want to say, are you interested in biodiversity? Are you interested in conservation? Are you interested in pollution, climate change? This can help you curate and automate certain segments of your communications to focus on the causes that are more dear to them. You might want to also look at the acquisition source. Coming back to what we talked earlier around peer-to-peer, generally speaking, people that are acquired through peer-to-peer campaigns are not as committed to the cause because they're committed to the funder. What you can do, is say, thank you so much for supporting, and you can put in the name of the fundraiser that they donated to. This person is the type of person that has been donating and has been involved in an organization for a very long time. We really appreciate them getting you involved in joining the organization. So you can really target based on what we know about different acquisition sources, or if they gave to, let's say, the bus campaign, you might want to talk to them about that versus just the general actions of your organization. So these different criteria, and of course, like, you don't have to do them all. It's about doing the best you can with your resources, okay? But the earlier you start of tagging your donors based on different criteria from the get-go, the easier it'll be to just maintain these segments. Okay, so I'll give you a little case study of what I did around when I did a database analysis for a homeless shelter in Montreal. We segmented their database of 10,000 donors to find major donation prospects. So first of all, I established a prioritization point system. So I'll kind of give you a little like what that looked like in the matrix, but not the matrix, but the segmentation matrix that I'll show you later. But what it basically did is that for each, let's say for the amounts of giving, someone that had donated over $1,000 got 3 points. Someone that had given between 500 and 1,000 got 2 points. And someone that had given under 500 got 1 point. So for each line, this was in a spreadsheet, nothing fancy technology. Every donor had a different rating system for those 3 criteria of amount, frequency, and the recency, so the date of their last gift. So what did that mean is that at the end, I could easily go through, at the end, I would summarize the points. So they got, let's say 3 points for amount, 2 points for frequency, 1 point for the date of the last gift. So it gave them a total at the end, 6 points out of 9. But then with the amazing wonderfulness of my spreadsheet, I could just filter in order of biggest to smallest. So I had all of my 9-point donors, which they had given over $1,000. They had given over 3 times, and they had given in the last year. They're my top prospects. So they can become my priority 1 donors. And then I can go downwards into creating different strategies for each segment. So of course, this allows us to take into consideration different criteria because it's not just the amount that's important. It's the loyalty over time. It's we took 5 years. No, sorry, I'm lying. We had donors that had given since like 1986. I think they took all of their database. So that's why they had 10,000 donors. But I would suggest anyone that's given over 5 years ago should not be considered as an active donor. That doesn't mean you should not communicate with them, but you should be having warm-up strategies and only message those that are still opening your emails. So what you can do, for example, if they donated last in 1995, that would be way too long. But let's say 2005, okay? They haven't given for 20 years, much less likely. But if they're still reading all your emails, they're still active. Who knows? Maybe they're looking for a planned gift, or maybe they just haven't been solicited right. So you can still segment out those different segments. Okay, so we created this point system. I created a stewardship matrix, which I will show you in the next slide. But what it allowed us to do is that we identified $1.5 million in potential gifts from non-major donors that haven't given in the last 2 years. So they had given big enough donations to be considered potential major gifts, but they hadn't been solicited or hadn't given in the last 2 years. So we would be able to build a specific strategy to target these people, to share what's been happening in the last 2 years, why they should give again. And we were able to build up our donor database again of recent gifts. Okay, so what do I mean by a stewardship matrix? So this is a little example of what I was able to build for them. So once again, it's based on points. So amount of the gift is here. So here we have the 3 points. So those are the ones that gave over $1,000. And then we have different criteria. So the date of the last gift, 3 points was they gave in the last year. So these are your top donors. They should be getting personalized, handwritten letters, ideally, personalized phone calls, and my square wasn't large enough, but exclusive invitations. So come visit, come take a ride on the bus. Come, why don't you come and you'll be able to live an experience with us. Why don't you come visit? Then let's say someone who's given $800, they're still close. Oh, is my connection still stable? I'm just getting a notification.
Yeah, we just lost you for 20 seconds there, but you're back.
It's supposed to be really good internet here, but it's been kind of flaky. But we're good now? Okay. So what you can do is you can start seeing the types of stewardship strategies you're going to be using for your different segments, which makes it a lot easier to manage and to plan. So for example, here, these people have given under $500 only once, and they've given over 3 years ago. They shouldn't be the ones receiving your most personalized stewardship strategies. But what you can do is you can add them to your general newsletter. They'll be getting your general solicitations that you do to everyone. But what you can do is if they become active, let's say if they open your email, then that can trigger a solicitation for a one-time gift. So you're going to want to, this is how you can segment and use those segments to get more involved and more strategic with your stewardship. Okay. All right. Okay, perfect. My thing is being weird. 1 second. Okay. So the analysis component, we've made our segments. Now what? The segments are generally more high-level data. You can know their donor history, but you don't really know who they are as a person, generally speaking. So why would we want to analyze further? Well, we can establish donor personas. Donor personas are really trying to understand what is the profile of the type of person who will donate to your organization. Is it more women? Is it more men? What's their age? Where do they live? Are they more city? Are they more rural? What are their motivations? Are they parents? You can really build up these profiles by having a more in-depth analysis. By knowing that, you can then identify your best approach strategies. There are tons of reports available on different generations appreciating different types of stewardship. If we think about older generations, generally, they will still respond better to letters sent by mail or solicitations by mail. Younger generations, no. Try calling a younger, like Generation Z or whatever they're called now. They don't answer the phones. That causes anxiety. So what we do is we would tend them as maybe a DM on Instagram, or you might want to connect with them on TikTok, or you might want to send at least emails, but maybe be more active on social media. So by knowing who your donor personas are, you can then establish which strategies are best, yes, to acquire them, but also to maintain relationships and to do your stewardship. So you're going to want to know who these people are. Another reason why you want to analyze your database is you might want to know, who am I not reaching? Am I not reaching the older generation? Am I not reaching 40-year-olds? Am I not reaching men? Am I not reaching Indigenous populations? Am I not? You can really better understand what are your gaps in acquisition, but also from an awareness and visibility perspective. So how do we create these personas? You can use 3 different sources or more, of course. You can still use your database if your database has information on their address, for example, with their postal codes. You can build a map of where are the hotspots of where you're attracting people. Is it spread out and it's a bit everywhere? Is it really focused in one city, so that you can have the geographical data to help build up your profiles? But you might want to also do some internal surveys. So you might want, with a little incentive, like, oh, everyone that participates in our survey, we will, be able to give away this gift basket to one lucky winner. I suggest having an incentive because people generally don't like filling out surveys. But that will allow you to ask more in-depth information on what do they do? What is their career? You can even ask some more sensitive information about what is their annual income. You can always leave the option of leaving, like, I'm not comfortable answering, that's no problem. You can always ask, what motivated you to donate to us? What causes interest you more? So you can really start building a more in-depth profile based on your exact data. You can also, like I said, use external reports that will show generally who supports different causes. Okay, so I'll give you a little example, a little case study that I did with an environmental defense nonprofit. So they wanted to increase their newsletter list by 9,000 emails. So the point was to do acquisition of new people. Their mindset was, well, if we increase by 9,000 emails and we know that our general acquisition rate of donations is 3%, well, we'll still be getting more donations just by having more people on our list. So what did we do? We did a data analysis to identify their current persona. So they had donors, members, and then just email subscribers. So we did 3 profiles. We analyzed, so who are the people who are donors? What does their profile look like? And then their members, which is more that they give an annual contribution to go to their General Assembly and vote and all that. What does their profile look like? And then we also looked at who are the general profiles of people that are just on their newsletter. Why would we want to do that? Well, because are we trying to just boost their newsletter of people who are just going to read their newsletter? Or do we want to boost their newsletter with emails that are similar to the profile of their donors or their members? What's important? The point was to get more donations in. So we would want to focus on acquisition strategies that focus on the profile of our members and our donors. If we know that if it's 80% that is women that are donating, then we're going to want to target women. If it's our members are majoritarily men, majoritarily over 50 years old, we're going to want to do acquisition strategies to target that population. Okay, so that's what we did to do the data analysis. Then we were able to identify the different personas, and we created an acquisition strategy for each segment. Something that was really interesting was that we realized that there was no youth. There was no one under 25 that had answered the survey. And if we looked at the reports, what did we notice? We noticed that according to statistics, youth under 25 are the ones that are most likely to donate to environmental causes. So why aren't they in the list? So once again, yes, we can build up the current donor profile, the current member profile, but we were maybe missing a target by not being as active on social media, by maybe not reaching out or targeting communications to the younger generation that will potentially become donors. Maybe not right now, but they're much more aware of these issues and of the impact of climate change. So this is why analyzing your donor personas and creating these profiles is so important to understanding who donates to you and who doesn't. They also noticed, by the way, that they had these little hotspots in 2-3 cities, and that we knew where we can target from it. And where can we think about that being useful? Social media ads. If you have a contest, if you have an awards or something, you can target based on location. So if we know that they were coming from certain cities, we can then be much more strategic in our outreach approaches. Okay. Now, I'll give you another little case study on the importance of stewardship and segmentation, but we're going to talk a bit more about the segmentation strategies now. Just give me a second. I have so many windows open, I can't even see them doing anything. Okay, so once we've built up our personas, we know what they are. Now comes the stewardship component of how we're going to keep these people together. So it's a little Christmas story. You know, it's way past Christmas, but we'll just keep it we'll pretend we're in the Christmas spirit. So the context, this was the Montreal SPCA. I was doing an audit of one of their campaigns as part of my certificate in nonprofit development. And they launched a fundraising campaign in February to renovate their entire sterilization clinic. They needed to raise $250,000. When we did the audit, we realized it was a complete flaw. It was in February, so only 2 months after their end of year campaign. So they were retargeting people that had just donated not too long ago. We did an audit. The campaign copy was meh. There wasn't as much personal stories, but the campaign ended up being a success because one donor sent in a check for $250,000. One person funded the entire campaign. She was an annual donor of $500. She didn't live in Montreal. She lived at the other end of the world, not the other end of the world being BC. And she decided to fund the entire campaign. Why? Well, this donor every year received a handwritten card from the Montreal SPCA thanking her for her gift. And her conception of that was that an organization that takes the time to take care of those details and to focus on the relationships is an organization that I trust to bring this project to fruition. And she happened to have a cat, and then the cat was named in, the clinic was named in the honor of her cat because she had decided to stay anonymous. So we also have some recognition, acknowledgement there. So if this doesn't convince you of the importance of good stewardship, I don't know what will. But this is just a great example of it's not just your major donors of thousands of dollars that need stewardship, because you can have mid-level donors that you just need to treat them properly, and they will then flower into the major donors that you want. Okay, so what are the different stewardship strategies that we can involve? And this is the ones that we can pop into our segmentation matrix. So of course, there's personalized emails. So writing one-on-one from Catherine at, whatever it may be, making it really like a typical email, not a newsletter with all the bells and whistles and images. It really looks like it's being sent by Elizabeth, by Rebecca, by Colleen. That makes, first of all, people are much more likely to open it. And it feels like you're writing to them because you are. So that's one. Number two, thank you and follow-up calls. So what you can do is always even if they don't answer, what you can do is you call everyone at least once and you at least leave a voice message. That can be your one thing you do. Postcards and handwritten letters. These are key in making people feel welcome. That doesn't mean you send it every month. But let's say when someone becomes a new monthly donor, sending them a really personalized handwritten card that says, thank you for joining, their retention rate is going to be much higher because they feel like you took the point of getting them, even if it was $10 a month. $10 a month times 12 times 8 years on average. Think about it. That's building up a major donation potential. Recognition events and VIP experiences. So what I said, you can have special events for certain segments of your donors, maybe just a monthly giving invitation, or maybe major gifts, but having these VIP special experiences that make them feel like they're part of an exclusive group is really helpful. There's also visual and permanent recognition when we're talking about things on the walls, or you can have like a donor wall. You can have it also be less permanent by having it be projected, or things that you can take down. But having these more like formal visual forms of recognition is also very helpful in building up stewardship with your donors. But how do we choose which strategy to do? Well, there's different criteria. So there's the level and donation capacity. So if we know that they can give more, we might treat them differently. Of course, follow your segmentation strategy. Who is your target audience and personas? Are they the type of people that like things by mail? Are they more into email? Are they more? You can do this by doing some research on what their different demographics like. What is their mission and values? If you're an environmental organization, maybe sending a whole bunch of things by mail is not going to be as aligned. Maybe doing a barbecue for an animal welfare organization that serves meat is not going to be aligned with your values. So you always have to make sure that your stewardship strategies fit with your organization. Of course, try to respect their preferences. If you're able to ask, like, do you prefer email? Do you prefer phone? On a follow-up survey after a donation, you can then segment those. And finally, the most important is your capacity. Don't engage or commit yourself to doing things that you don't have the capacity to do. This is where the segmentation can come into play, of trying to focus on those that represent your biggest and highest donors, just from an efficiency perspective. If you have 20 people that represent 80% of your donations because they're your major donors, yes, you should be focusing on them and making them feel like the specialist of your donor database, because it just makes more sense. Okay. All right. So, oh my God, it's already 49 things. Time goes fast. All right. So I'll just quickly talk about automation, but I will talk about it most likely more in the second class next Monday. But for those who will not be present, I'll still touch on it quickly. All of these things that we've talked about can also be majoritarily automated, so that it's not you writing out these individual emails. The phone calls, yes, I wouldn't go for as far as putting an AI voice. Hello, thank you. It might be a bit weird. But with a lot of these strategies, you can automate it. Emails are automation's best friend. They are so easy to automate as long as you have a good email management system. And ideally, if you have a strong database that has proper tags, you can create an email series that creates a special journey for different segments. This could be when people subscribe to your newsletter, you want to build them up of getting to know you before you ask for a donation. So you might want to not send them your regular newsletter until they reach a certain point in their journey. You might want to send a special journey for people that make their first gift. Welcome to the team. We're so glad to have you on board. This is what we do. This is a story. And you might want to have someone particular when they join your monthly giving program that they receive different types of emails. This is very easy once you've done your segmentation and once you understand who your donors are to really curate your communications. I'll give you a quick little example of a first gift welcome series. So you might have your email on day one this is for someone who just made their first donation. Personalized thank you. When I say personalized, I mean you put their name, you ideally put the amount of their donation. Thank you so much, you donated to this campaign. Ask them to share what motivated them to give. So this is where you're going to also start doing some community storytelling, which was the topic of our last class together, Colleen, which was all around how can you mobilize your community into sharing stories, which will then be reused for your credibility for inviting more donors to you. So you might just want to reply to this email like, I'd love to hear what motivated you to give this time. Email 2, this is a couple days later. You might want to share an impact story related to this campaign. So I'm going to use, Rebecca, I'm going to be using your bus example just because it came up, but you can share maybe a couple of the bus trips that were able to be done thanks to, or maybe even just say we were able to buy this bus thanks to you. So this is where you're going to want to include photos. If you can embed a short video that showcases impact, even better. Or you might want to showcase a testimonial from one of your beneficiaries of like, we were able to get to this area. I hadn't been there in forever. Thank you so much for the opportunity. You want to really share a personal, that emotional component is going to come in that email. Email 3 is maybe about a week later. You might want to invite them. How else can you participate? You don't want to solicit them yet for another donation, but you can, we have a petition going on, or you can follow us on social media, or have you ever considered volunteering for the organization? You can offer other ways for them to get involved. So you're building up this sense of we want you to be part of us more than just donating. 2 weeks later, you're going to want to maybe send another thank you, but maybe from someone else, from your ED. Why did they join your organization? Or the president of your board? They're going to share their story and say, thank you so much for joining us. A month later, you might want to ask for a little survey, which is where you can also collect data on understanding your personas better. But you can also ask, like, how's been your experience so far? What would you like to hear more about? Here are some upcoming opportunities for involvement. And then you'd add them to your regular newsletter segment, so they'd start receiving your emails normally. Then and only then, because you want to curate their experience. And then you might want to have an email that goes out, let's say 4 months later, that is a second solicitation to donate again, or even to join your monthly giving program. You've been, you donate with us. We know that you care about the organization. We'd love to, extend the invitation to join our, whatever, Wheels on the Bus program or our Snip Brigade program, because we believe that you want to support us more long-term. So you can have this automated so that you don't have to be sending these emails individually, but they still feel more like personalized journeys. All right. So to sum it up, so we have a couple minutes if anyone has any questions. I really want anyone listening to really understand that focusing more on stewardship is a better investment than focusing on more acquisition campaigns. Yes, you need acquisition. We will talk about that in the next class on Monday, but stewardship is where the most money is going to be at, and it'll build you stability and relationships long-term. Kind of like dating. You can go on a whole bunch of first dates, but until you start doing those second dates, you're not going to find your partner that you want to maybe spend more time with. Same thing for donations. Not about Tinder. It's about those long-term relationships, okay? Number 2, monthly giving. It should be a priority. Build up your program, make it feel exclusive, make the copywriting, make people feel that they really want to participate. You really want to make it seem special, and ideally have a specific donation page for your monthly giving. You don't want them to be able to choose one time or monthly. Your monthly program, which all the copy and the amazing work of why you should be joining, should just have the monthly giving option. Get to know your donors better by segmenting and analyzing your database. As much as you can, try to understand who is already there so you know how to target them in the future. And finally, build more relationships with your donors. It's just try to get to know them one-on-one if you can. If you have a team, try to focus, even if it's 1 hour a month, where you try to connect with one person one-on-one that is in your high top tier of donors. Okay, so for everyone here, I invite you to sign up for my newsletter if ever you want to join. Once again, it'll also be a great example because by signing up, you'll get my welcome series, which will give you a little example of what it can look like. But I would love to be able to continue staying in contact with you. And of course, I can keep on sharing all the amazing value that I believe I share on social media. So if anyone also wants to join me on LinkedIn, I'm very active. So I'll pop that in the chat as well. And I'll actually, maybe I can actually just share you the link. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? I'll find the link to these 2 things to send it to you. Any questions, comments?
I think other than just to say a big thank you is very complimentary to some of the work that we're doing, and really reinforced things and got me thinking about other things. So just to affirm that that was great, and very appreciative of your time today.
Oh, thank you. That's what I do. I'm a fundraising nerd. I could do fundraising like it's my life. I'm gonna also share the newsletter link if ever the QR code is being weird. Any other questions before we go?
To follow Catherine as well on LinkedIn if you haven't yet, because I do follow you and like you post lots of great resources often. So just to keep in touch with what Catherine is up to. And also, to come next week on the 17th, same time on Zoom. I'll send a link so that we can have part 2 of this session as well. So thank you so much, Catherine. I'll leave the floor open in case there's anyone else that wants to chat or has any other questions, but just really appreciate your time and that you've joined us today. And thank you all for being here, most importantly, because we wouldn't have this session without all of you joining us. And I'm really glad that you're all here today and good to be together. And I think again, before we end, I do want to thank the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation again, because they really make this series possible through our partnership. So we're grateful to them for their support too.
And don't hesitate, for anyone that's looking to build up their monthly giving program, Jody, don't hesitate to reach out on LinkedIn if you have any questions. I'm very active, and I'm an idea person. I love being able to be like, oh, like we could talk about this. Like and that is what I do. You know, that is my job as a consultant. So don't hesitate to reach out, and we can see how I can help you, or also just exchange on LinkedIn. I'm very active there, so don't hesitate.
Thank you.
My pleasure.